Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book, The Art of War. You know, that 2,500-year-old manual on conflict that somehow has become the playbook for winning at pretty much everything, from the boardroom all the way to your personal life. But it all kicks off with this really fascinating paradox. So think about this for a second. The most famous book ever written about war is actually a guide on how to, well, avoid it. That's the core idea from Sun Tzu, right? True victory, it doesn't come from brute force. It comes from intelligence, from preparation, from being efficient. The goal isn't to fight harder, it's to think better. Okay, so how on earth do you do that? Well, it all starts with our first pillar, winning before the battle even begins. And no, this isn't just about being optimistic. This is about making victory almost predictable. It's about doing the hard work and superior planning long before the first move is ever even made. And this right here? This is the absolute cornerstone of all that planning. This piece of ancient advice is basically the world's first SWOT analysis. I mean, it's about taking a brutally honest look at yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and doing the exact same thing for your opponent and the entire situation you're in. So Sun Tzu actually breaks this down into 5 key factors. And what's just wild is how perfectly they map onto modern business strategy. You've got the moral law, that's basically just having a great company culture where everyone's on the same page. Heaven, that's all about market timing. Earth is knowing your niche, your territory. The commander is just solid leadership, wisdom and courage. And method and discipline, well, that's your systems, your operations. If you get these 5 things right, you've essentially engineered your own success from the get-go.
All right, let's build on that and move to the second pillar. Because once you've done all that planning, your next move shouldn't be some big head-on collision. No, Sun Tzu argues for something much smarter, psychological and strategic maneuvering. It's really about being clever and indirect, not just being the most powerful person in the room.
And this slide, man, this just perfectly illustrates his most famous and, let's be honest, most controversial idea. All warfare is based on deception. Now, this isn't about being dishonest or lying. It's about controlling the narrative, right? It's about shaping what your opponent thinks is happening. So when you're strong, you appear weak. You want them to get overconfident. When you're about to attack, you look like you're doing nothing. You control their perception, and by doing that, you control their actions. Which, of course, brings up a great question for us today. Is this really deception, or is it just smart strategy? I mean, think about a stealth startup. You know, the kind that works quietly behind the scenes, building and testing, and then bam, they have this massive launch that nobody saw coming. That's pure Sun Tzu. It's all about controlling information to create a huge advantage. But look, we all know that no plan, no matter how brilliant it is, ever survives first contact with reality, right? And that brings us to our third and maybe most important pillar, adaptability. Sun Tzu knew that things are always changing. The strategist who can't change, who's too rigid, that's the one who's going to break. And I just love this metaphor. It's so powerful. A great strategist has to be like water. I mean, water doesn't have a fixed shape, does it? It just molds itself to whatever container it's in. It flows around things. It always finds the path of least resistance. The idea here is to adapt your strategy to the situation, not try to force some rigid plan onto a world that's constantly changing. So what happens if you don't adapt? Well, the consequences are pretty severe. Sun Tzu points out these 5 dangerous faults in a leader. And what do they all have in common? Every single one of them makes you predictable. A reckless leader can be easily lured into a trap. A hot-tempered leader can be provoked with a simple insult. See, being rigid in your character leads to being rigid in your strategy. And in any competition, that is a fatal flaw. Okay, so let's put it all together. When you combine that incredible preparation, that smart, indirect action, and that fluid adaptability, what do you actually get? Well, you get a timeless guide for navigating pretty much any challenge, any battle we face in our own modern lives. I mean, just think about it for a second. Negotiating a raise, you prepare, you know what they can offer, you know your own value. That's winning before you even walk in the room. Leading a team through a crisis, you absolutely have to adapt like water. Launching a startup, trying to navigate tricky office politics, all of these are just modern battlefields where Sun Tzu's wisdom is incredibly relevant. So I want to leave you with this one question to think about. Just look at the challenges you're facing right now in your own life. Which one of them doesn't actually need more effort or more fighting or more conflict? Which battle could you win simply by preparing better, by being a little more adaptable? by just thinking differently instead of fighting harder. The insights in a book this old they're just timeless, aren't they? Hey, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.